you met and where you met?
Well, we met briefly at the Flame Club in Duluth in, it was about the 1st of April in 1940. Myrtle's nursing class was having a dinner there. Some of them had just returned from St. Peter, Minnesota, where they had taken their special training in psychiatry and neurology. And the next batch was about to go down.
And what were you doing in Duluth?
Well, every 3 months we had a new girlfriend, and three of us,
came to look the trip over.
Cliff Gehring and Pat Stoffergren and I went up to Duluth with our old girlfriends and looked for new ones. And I found Myrtle. And then we had our first date then back in St. Peter when she had come down there for her training. I was a junior at Gustavus. Just about a week before school started, I got a job at Balloton, Minnesota, teaching no mathematics. And I did teach chemistry, physics, biology, general science, and junior business training. And I didn't even know how to fold a business letter.
Didn't even know how to spell them all.
No, I should say not. The first day of school, the very first day of school, I got a telegram from the University of Nebraska offering me the assistantship that I'd applied for. They had one to give that year, and they'd given it to one of their own students, and he was drafted. So they had this one. So the superintendent was very nice. He was a Gustavus graduate. In fact, he was in the Minnesota legislature. And he said if I could stay around for a week or so, he would be glad to release me to go to graduate school. So I taught, I think, 2 weeks. The University of Nebraska hadn't started yet. But the second day of school, I got a special delivery letter from the University of South Dakota offering me the assistantship I had applied for. I applied for 2 and got both of them, but a little late. Anyway, went off to Nebraska, then Lincoln. That was a tough thing to do, to leave, because my mother and dad were involved in a very bad automobile accident in Minnesota. I think it was the 4th of July. And Mother was in a cast from her waist to her knees. One of her legs had been broken in 5 places, and it was the leg on which she had had several operations when she was a child. She had TB of the bone, and her leg just shattered. And so when I left home to go down to Nebraska, I didn't think I'd ever see my mother walk again. But she was flat on her back in this cast. But she came out of it fine and walked without a limp later. But then you came down to Lincoln on the 17th of October, and we were married on the 18th. We went to the courthouse and had a couple of the employees there stand up with us. After the ceremony was over and we left, got halfway down the steps of the courthouse, and what did you ask me?
I said, well, can I have my ring now?
I suppose the judge thought we couldn't afford a wedding band.
We couldn't, but we
Couldn't,
did.
that's right. So for our honeymoon, we went over to the state capitol and took the elevator to the top of the capitol, gazed over Lincoln, and our landlady, Mrs. Seifert, gave us, what, $10 for a wedding present, or was it $5? Anyway, we went out and had a nice meal for that. And then, of course, Bus and Joe and I ended up living right beside us. We built together next door to us, and Georgie Knight was Ken's best friend. They were pals. They were little boys.
Yeah. They were just sick as they could be.
One day they disappeared. We couldn't find them. We hunted and hunted, and I was over at Wesleyan, and Mom called. She was frantic. The boys had disappeared, and they had searched the neighborhood, couldn't find them. Said, "You better come home and help us." So I tore out of the back door of the main building there, and there were George and Kenneth, filling their pockets with cigarette butts. And they were about 4 years old. I can remember so plainly, George took a hold of the seat of his pants and looked at me so seriously, just, "I want my own dad to spank me." Oh, they were.
Oh, that was what. And another time, the grocer, he lived just about 2 blocks from us, and it went across a very busy street in Huntington. And he called to say that he thought he had our boy and another boy in his store, and he'd hold them there till we came. They had gone all the way down there without saying anything. And how much money did they have?
Well, they had a $10 bill that Georgie had found in the house someplace, and they were buying some candy, and the grocer was a little suspicious.
They're going to buy that much candy.
I taught at the university on assistantship 1 year, and then the next year I got an instructorship there. Finished my master's degree mid-year through that second year. But the war had started, and they had drafted so many people that there weren't people available with doctor's degrees to teach. So that's how I got, I just was still working on my master's degree when I got the instructorship. So I was at the University of Nebraska 2 years. And then I met John M. Howey, who was about to retire after many, many years as the teacher of mathematics at Nebraska Wesleyan, which was located in Lincoln. He told me about his retirement. If I was interested, I should apply. Well, of course, that was a Methodist school, and we were going to Trinity Methodist Church. I went out, got some application forms and talked to them out there and got the job. Was hired as an associate professor, no less. Didn't have my doctor's degree. Well, that didn't last very long because I taught 1 year. At the end of that first year, I knew I was going to get called. I just couldn't get deferred any longer. So I took a job at Goodyear. They made self-sealing gas tanks for airplanes. If a bullet would go through them, they'd seal themselves. And I stayed at that job till I was called up. I went to a pre-induction physical down to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. First time I had ever ridden on a train. I was shipped to Buckley Field in Colorado for Air Corps. I was assigned to the Air Corps, Army Air Corps. There wasn't any Air Force at that time. Army Air Corps for basic training. And since we were going down through Omaha and then on out to Denver, we got on the same train. Fred and Mom and I got on the same train.
Thank goodness Fred was wearing a snowsuit. So
I don't know why at that time of the year, but we were in Minnesota.
It was chilly and cold.
But I had Fred in my arms, and when I had to get on the car, Myrtle was going to take him first and bring him back to me. I took and handed him, and he went right over my shoulder and landed right on the brick or cement platform of the car. Oh, we were just...
Thank heavens,
so
it was all covered with this.
Never hurt him a bit, but he just went right over. We got on the train, and I asked the porter if I could take Fred with me in the bunk so he could sleep and Myrtle could sit up and be alone. She said sure, so I had Fred in the sleeper with me. About 4 o'clock in the morning, he woke up. I want my mommy! I want my mommy!
Can you imagine this on a troop train?
Oh, Fred, be quiet. Couldn't shut him up. So the porter went and got Mom, and I carried him up to the car, end of the car, towards where she was, and she took him in the rest of the night. Everyone from California was sent to the routing pool for the 2nd Air Force, which was Lincoln, Nebraska. And I, from Lincoln, Nebraska, was sent to the routing pool for the 4th Air Force, which was Lemoore, California.
Isn't that typical?
Oh, it was done on purpose, of course. Oh, if I could have just gone to Lincoln. I was sick about that. But anyway, I went out to Lemoore. We got up to Lemoore, and I suppose 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and boy, here we were, 3 of us, and no place to sleep. And we called the hotel in Hanford, which was the county seat, and no, they didn't have any space. And we walked the streets in Lemoore and didn't find anything, so I finally went back to this lady and told her, we just need a place to sleep. So she fixed up a bed for us, and it was just going to be for a night or two till we find something else. And they slept out on the porch, and then it was just a little porch. There was just about room for a double bed there, and that was it, or a cot. And the 2 of them slept there. They were the Hayes, Mom and Pop Hayes.
Mom and Pop Hayes.
Well, they had rented. They had 2 other rooms, one of which we were supposed to have, but they'd rented another GI couple and a little boy. And the other couple that rented the other room that had was another GI couple with a little boy. Yeah. And here we were, a GI couple with a little boy, taking the 3rd bedroom, which was really their bedroom. Well, turned out that Mom Hayes thought that was a good deal. they could sleep out on the porch and keep us there, and they'd have a little more money. Well, we thought, well, it was so crowded there, and it would be nice if we could have a little more privacy. So we found a place out about a mile out of town, and we had no way of getting there other than walking and carrying our groceries and things out a mile out of town. But at least we were alone. But that lasted a month. Oh, we were out there, and we didn't have. They cut off the oven heat. That was all that we had, was the oven. Every night after we got done fixing our food, so we couldn't have any heat there, and it was cold. Fred slept with his snowsuit on. Oh, it was cold. So we moved back into town. We moved back to Hayes. It wasn't as bad as we thought it was. A lady who lived about 3 doors away from Hayes, a single lady, and her mother. And this lady worked for the doctor. She was his nurse. And she wanted to take a vacation, and she wanted somebody to stay with her mother, who was an invalid. And she had Myrtle come and work for her. Eva was her name.
Oh, yes.
She wanted to take a vacation, get away. She wanted somebody to live in the house. She said, why don't you and your husband just come and live here? And you can pay the bills, and that's all. Well, that was great. It was a very nice house. But we weren't there but about 2 weeks, and my orders came to.
It was too good to be true.
Oh, that was heaven. And the orders read that I would leave the base within 48 hours or something like that. That travel by private auto was not authorized. Well, that didn't bother us. We didn't have a car anyway. That I'd be accompanied or joined by no dependents. And I would travel to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and upon arrival thereat telephone a certain number for instructions. I was processed in and told that I was not to apply for OCS, Officers Candidate School. I was not to request a transfer. I was going to stay there till the war was over. Boy, that was music to my ears, because the war wasn't going so well then. I was glad to stay there. They also told me that if the project they were working on was successful, the war would be over within a month of the time it was used. And that was hard to believe, too. Just 1 month that something could end the war. Well, of course it did. They established a university at Los Alamos, and they had, of course, plenty of powerful lecturers there. I remember when Fermi was one of the lecturers. And whenever they'd get done with his lectures, they'd stamp his notes secret, because he was giving out lots of stuff in his lectures that was still classified information.
Were you able to talk about anything you'd done at Los Alamos?
Well, for a long time I couldn't, because we were told that it would take a long time to declassify this information, and we shouldn't talk about it. And they sent us all from Los Alamos down to Fort Bliss. And the people down at Fort Bliss in the processing center were told not to question us about what we had done, because it was all classified work. I remember one thing they did do, though, is they really put pressure on us to stay in the reserves, the Army reserves, particularly the inactive reserves. You couldn't go wrong there. Your time would accumulate. You didn't have to go to drills, nothing, just accumulate time, and then when you retired, you would have a military retirement income. Well, I wasn't interested, and I said no. Boy, am I glad I did, because when the Korean conflict came along, the first ones called were the inactive reservists, and they were taken right out of school. I had them in my classes. When I went to Nebraska Wesleyan, I think I got $1,800. When I came out after the service, I think maybe $2,100. And even as late as 1954, I think my salary was about $4,000, and I came to DePauw for, I think, $5,200. So that was an incentive to leave Nebraska Wesleyan, because it was a big raise.
Ken was born in 46?
Ken was born in 46, and he was born at Bryan Memorial Hospital. And then we came here, and we lived at what was it, 718 South Locust Street. It's where Holgate Hall now stands.